Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Overanalyzing Creepypasta here on the Overanalyst channel. I'm your host, the aforementioned Overanalyst, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it previously, but recently I was accepted into the Blue Majora Collective here on YouTube. Now, that's headed up by Michael Leroy, that's Jacob Sherwood, who joined me for the first two episodes of the show. And I am just extremely honored and would like to take a bit of time to thank him and the other members. That'd be Vince12, who does wrestling and creepypasta videos, Third of Clubs, our webmaster and a Let's Player, and MD Phantasm, who has been on the show before, and he specializes in parodying video games and making the occasional Let's Play, or as he calls it, Let's Fuck Around With video. And I would like to thank each and every one of them for accepting me into their midst, and I will post links to the main Blue Majora channel and each of the other members' channels down in the description below for you to go peruse, and I would highly recommend that you do so. At least take a look, see if there's anything there you like. We're a fairly diverse group, so there's bound to be something that each of you enjoys. And I would also like to apologize. I know I said I would be doing a weekly release schedule, but things around here have been getting a bit crazy, Things are starting back up this time of the year. A lot of things are getting fired up. Things are a bit hectic, but I do promise you this. I will be making at least one video a week from this point on. I had some truly hectic things to take care of, but now they're all resolved and we'll be back on track. Today, I'm here by myself, no guest host today, I'm just running up a quick video for you guys. We are back where it all began. We're on Creepypasta.com. Okay? Now, one thing I want to talk about really quickly before we begin is the difference between Creepypasta.com and the Creepypasta Wiki. The Creepypasta Wiki is probably what most of you are familiar with if you're big into this community, in this subgenre of online fiction. The Creepypasta Wiki is done in the format of the other wiki sites under the Wikia domain, and while I'm a big fan of most wikis, I think they're a great place to store and find information created by a community that's passionate about whatever information it is they're sharing. The Creepypasta Wiki is not something I would recommend due to the fact that their standards exist, but they're not really consistent. There's one administrator, who I'm not going to call out by name, who has this really, really bad habit of either purging entire swaths of content or keeping really bad stories around simply because they enjoy them on a personal level. And I think not only is that counterproductive to the community, because, if you want to create something, and you want positive feedback and negative feedback, and you just want to see what people think of what it is you created, and it's your first time doing this, you really want feedback based upon what the entire community, centered around whatever it is you're passionate about, thinks of what it is you created. Not what one person who happens to have controlling interest thinks based upon their own, and in this case, admittedly rather limited, standards. So, if you're a first-time creepypasta author, I heavily encourage you to submit your story not to the Creepypasta Wiki, because this administrator will very likely purge it if it falls into one of a few categories based on theme, like said administrator will no longer allow video game pastas, and internet pastas are being cracked down on. And while I agree they've been done to death, and it's very easy to make them generic, I don't think it's fair to say, for instance, we had one very poor science fiction novel, so we as a global community are banning the entire genre of science fiction from here on out. I think if you want to add a little innovation to a genre, like web pastas, lost episode pastas, video game pastas, things like that have become incredibly stagnant, I think you should be given a chance to. Which leads me to my second point, Creepypasta.com. Creepypasta.com and its sister site, Crappypasta.com, are run up by one person who also lets the community decide a great deal of what goes on the site and what doesn't, and how it gets sorted, all that. So I very strongly prefer Creepypasta.com as far as quality standards and in how the management treats the common man around on the site. You see, on Creepypasta.com, if you submit a story into them, so long as it is not abysmally poor or a direct plagiarism of what someone else has done, or, a plagiarism of concepts or ideas, more often than not, it's going to be accepted and put up for review either on Creepypasta.com, which means you made it, or on Crappypasta.com, which is nowhere near quite as insulting as it sounds. You see, Crappypasta typically refers to, obviously, creepypasta stories and tales that don't quite live up to the already prestigious expectations of the community. But you see, here's what's different about how Crappypasta.com handles its poor stories vis-a-vis the Creepypasta Wiki. On Creepypasta Wiki, like I say, if either the community or more often than not that one administrator does not like your story, you are through. You don't get a chance to correct it. You don't get a chance to get some feedback. More often than not, it's just over, and you are dismissed. Your story is dismissed as a failure with no chance for revision. However, on Crappypasta.com, stories are not put there solely to be mocked, but rather so they can be improved upon, because the administrator and the audience at large both present a lot of constructive criticism and just general feedback to the author, who, more often than not, can go in, slightly rework their story, change the phrasing of some things. A lot of times I see pacing has to be fixed. Grammar is another big one. And if you improve your story to the point where the community starts upvoting it enough, the administrator will personally move it over to the main Creepypasta.com site. And also, this is something you'll never see on Creepypasta Wiki, from time to time, stories have been placed by the administrator based upon their own preferences on the Crappypasta.com forum, and the community disagreed so strongly with the administrator that the admin then personally apologized and moved stories back over to Creepypasta.com based entirely not on their opinion of what the particular piece submitted was, but the fact that it received such a unanimously positive response from the public. And I think that's really, really cool. So, if you please, if you want to support Creepypasta in one form or another, I would heavily suggest you to support Creepypasta and Crappypasta.com and the person who runs it, because they are by and far more professional, more orderly, and far more respectful to their patrons than those over at Creepypasta Wiki. But I've been ranting long enough. It's time for us to get to the meat of today's story. Sorry, I just had to get a little public service announcement out of the way for all of you out there. Okay, for our first episode, when Jacob Sherwood joined me, we did 3 short, poor stories from Creepypasta.com. Today, I'm back here again on Creepypasta.com to do just that, but it's going to be solo. And we're going to take a look at 3 stories from the lowest rated pastas section of Creepypasta.com, and if you're wondering where that is, it's right at the bottom of any page on the wiki. Not wiki, blah, blah. It's right at the bottom of any page on the website. You will find a list of the top rated pastas, lowest rated pastas, most viewed pastas, and most discussed pastas. Certainly something to check out. Now, we have a list of lowest rated pastas here. I'm looking for ones we have not done. We did the town of Blanche. We did the Glacier Canyon and Post Office. We did the Mummified Head. Let's see. Here we go, the Med Student. Now, a quick reminder to my dear audience as we get booted up. Each of these stories will be rated according to the Overanalyst 3 pillars of analysis. That would be concept, what's the general idea when summarized down to 1 or 2 sentences. Execution, how well did the author pull off the expression of their concept and communication of central ideas to the audience through use of phrasing, adjectives, pacing, etc. And lastly, grammar, which is fairly self-explanatory and is the one you will most likely see me becoming the most agitated on. Anyhow, today's first story is The Med Student, which received a 3.8 out of 10. Not good. It's also an impossibly short story, so here we go. An unpopular young med student had been particularly annoying one day. Well, you're okay, that's alright. And some of her classmates decided to play a trick on her. What? Okay, hold on. This is where I raise a minor issue with this. This is a med student, so this is someone who, at the very youngest, would have to be around 22, 23. And here we have almost a double barrel blast of author incompetence. Because you see, dear audience, when you're 22 or 23 years old, and moreover than that, in medical school, you tend to be mature, bit more civilized, as well as a bit more clinical in your thought and actions. I should know because I have several medical professionals in my family. But here we have someone who is, as we say, a young adult, annoying enough to where her classmates, who, remember, are also well-educated grown adults, decide to play a trick on the other one. This is something I feel, elementary school students, or at the very worst, middle school students would do. This is not something I would expect to find in, amongst a full collective of people, where several of people in a group have this mindset of med students. It's a minor nitpick, but this story's so small, I have to find something. They snuck into her room after she'd gone to bed and placed an amputated arm into bed with her. Jesus Christ, that's disgusting. And pretty sure it's unethical, too. Like, you get a write-up for that. Messing around with discarded tissue, things like that. The next morning, they anxiously awaited her reaction, but got none. Eventually, they went up to check on her, and found her sitting on the bed, moaning and gurgling as she gnawed on the arm. The end. Wow. This is it. This story right here. Let me tell you something. The mummified head was 2 sentences long, and that was offensive, I'll tell you what. Deciding to author something like that and release it with but 2 sentences written out. And the post office was just impossibly poor, with contradicting itself and misspellings, all that. But this is the worst pasta I've ever read. It reads like a poor attempt at an old urban legend, but it also lacks a significant amount of the punch. Right, well, let's just get this stinker out of the way on the 3 pillars of analysis. First off, concept. Med student's a cannibal. Ooh. Alright, I guess that could be further interpreted into the fact that when near cadavers or patients who have been rendered unconscious, she would nibble off bits of them, but it just doesn't do anything for me. The execution is very straightforward, except, once again, that first sentence about her being, once again, grown-ass adult, annoying, and some of her classmates trying to play a trick on her with a cadaver, or at least with a discarded limb. That's not a trick, and that's not the professionalism expected, or even, that is not something that would get you thrown out of med school, or at least severely reprimanded. Because medical professionals are often, placed in charge of life or death situations, or situations which can have a very serious emotional or psychological toll on the patients or on the sufferers of the disease or injury, whatever it may be. So, I honestly doubt that these medical professionals in training would be so excessively immature as to do something like that, especially with discarded tissue that had to be removed from someone. It's just not right. It's not on the one, and it really, really doesn't fit, like I say, a graduate school scenario. So if the author wants to set up this idea of, oh, this medical student is in fact a cannibal who feasts upon dead flesh, then okay, you could go somewhere with that. But at the same time, set it up much better than this, and this is a story that could have benefited from being much longer, having more setup, giving us more backstory, getting us slightly attached to a couple of the characters, perhaps. Flesh it out. Some pastas work better, and some concepts work more effectively when they are shorter and more concise. This is not one of them. And due to the author's what appears to be either laziness or just extreme urge to crap out a story as quickly as possible, the concept gets driven into the ground, and the entire story, even though it takes not but about 20 seconds to read, suffers for it. Grammatically, it's fine, but I just can't get over the incredibly poor execution. Link will be in the description below if you wish to check it out, but till then, let's move on. The next one shall be... Here we are. Taken Down, which got a 3.6. That's slightly worse than the med student, if you can believe it. Well, actually, that one looks okay enough. Let's try something else. Here we are, Snap, which got a 3.5. This is one of the absolute lowest rated pastas on the wiki. So here we go. Snap, which got a 3.5 out of 10. I used to live in the lower Queen Anne region of Seattle, just a few blocks from the Space Needle, which has a little park around it. Lawns, a fountain, sculptures, a theater, and museums. A little park which is remarkably safe after nightfall. Hey, you know what? That is a fairly good opening sentence. It sets us out a nice, pleasant mental image for this story to begin, and I can only assume it goes severely downhill from here and degrades in quality because it got the 3.5, but we'll see. There is also, in the same complex that has all these great museums and verdant lawns, a sad little failing fair, which is deserted enough in the daytime. It was a great hangout for me and my friends after dark. We used to climb to the top of the roller coaster, smoke a little pot, and talk about the sort of trouble we could get in if we actually had the nerve, which we never did. So, is this their version of getting drunk and talking about all the people's asses they could kick? Yeah, man, I could, like Vin Diesel, man, I could totally, like, just be the piss out of him. But, I mean, like, I wouldn't, just saying, like, because I got that knee injury back in high school playing football, but I could if I just had to, you know what I'm saying? Like I could do it. Yeah. That is what I picture going on here, but I digress. It was nice. We were so high up, or possibly just high, we could see all the city lights glittering like deep-sea fish, and there was a lovely feeling of wrongdoing coupled with the almost certain fact that nobody cared we were there. Okay, so if nobody cares that you're there and there's no security personnel, then you're not exactly... Yes, you're technically trespassing, but come on, it's a bunch of stoners climbing up on top of a roller coaster and thinking they see buildings like fish and seeing everything like a surrealist Vincent van Gogh artwork because they're just that blitzed at the moment. I'm not going to, were I a security officer, I'm not going to run those people off the premises. Oh, and our cavalcade of drugs gets worse, dear audience. One day we decided to do shrooms instead. It was a good idea at first, but no, it wasn't! Now, look, marijuana has been proven to have very, very, very limited effects as far as detriments go on the human system. It is as safe to indulge in any capacity as any other. Sorry, kind of lost track of what I was saying. Marijuana is the absolute safest, I guess you could say, drug or controlled substance to indulge in. Now, I never personally have, but I have been around people who have, and it does not provide any lasting effects that are immediately noticeable or severe on the human body. Now, magic mushrooms, on the other hand, will completely and totally mess your day up. So this really is quite a grand leap in severity, you know? From the marijuana, which is very safe, it's becoming legal in many states. It's very mild as far as its effects go on the human system, to magic mushrooms, which totally blow the mind and several other areas of the body completely out of whack. So I guess what I'm saying, dear audience, is don't do any drugs, but especially don't do the mushrooms. Anyway, the pretty lights and cool, crisp air became a religious experience. Then, all of a sudden, snap! Something changed. Oh, the bad part of the trip. I see. We all felt it. The air wasn't cool or crisp anymore. It was musty and humid and had a horrible, somehow familiar smell. The lights started to move about in a very unusual manner, sort of lurching and bobbing, and above all, approaching. Yeah, these poor kids are definitely having a bad trip. We didn't see anything actually come into the little patch of fair that we were looking down on, but the lights around it were far, far too close together. Once again, you took a hallucinogenic, you're experiencing mild hallucinations, and you don't feel very positively about the hallucinations. Regardless, the culpability and the blame lies solely with you, jackass. Obviously, we started to freak out. Me and Anne-Marie and Brian... What? Perched up on that coaster edge like our lives depended on it, but Eric broke off running. Who the hell is Eric? Look. Oh, my. Okay. Dear author, you previously explained that your protagonist has friends that he likes to go and get high with, he or she, and they would go to a fair. However, what you did not do is specify the identity of any of these persons with whom they were associating. So what we're left with, essentially, dear audience, is three people who appear right out of nowhere, which, it's a bad trip, I guess I could, but with no establishment of identity beforehand. And, I'm sorry this video isn't very comedic, but without a guest, I just, can't infuse very much comedy into it, but I do hope you're enjoying the analysis. I know I certainly am. So here we have three persons who receive names and identities without any sort of introductory information other than protagonist had friends. These are apparently the same friends, only now they're being named, without us knowing any of their character traits, their relation specifically to the protagonist, any of that. So we are left with essentially three characters materializing out of thin air. Which, once again, bad trip, so... Alright, so back to Eric. He made his way down the coaster with the grace of an ape, and lunged over the fence, and rushed off into the middle of the sane and healthy-looking concrete. This author is going to kill me by the end of the day because there's just so much to analyze here. He made his way down the coaster with the grace of an ape. Perhaps he could have specified something as chimpanzee, lemur, perhaps, because when you say ape, one of the first things I think of is gorilla. And if there's one word I would not use to describe the movement of a gorilla, it would be graceful. So, we also separate items in a sentence, or in a series, or relevant easily linked thoughts with commas. And if we use items in a series, we only use the word "and" prior to the final item in the series. Here the author states he made his way down the coaster with the grace of an ape, and lunged over the fence, and rushed off into the middle of the sane and healthy-looking concrete. We're going to get to the concrete bit in a minute, but the only place that "and" is allowed to be placed is right there, "and rushed off." "And lunged" is not proper because that is the middle item in a series of 3 relevant thoughts, and they are actions all being performed consecutively, therefore making them items in a series. This is a rather considerable grammatical error because this is something that most people are taught in 1st grade. But I digress. Rushed off into the middle of the sane and healthy-looking concrete. How in the hell is the concrete healthy-looking or of sound mind? It is inanimate, and unless you are so magnanimously, historically high that you are perceiving the ground as having not only a measurable level of sanity, but also of physical health, then you need professional help because you are Ozzy Osbourne. You need help. Anyhow, there was a huge chirring sound. I think they might mean chirping or whirring, but not churring, which was distinctly insect-like and seemed to come from no direct source, but rather from every molecule of the atmosphere that surrounded us. And this sounds exactly what I think a very high individual would speak like, so, sure. Then, snap! The city was back to its normal, peaceful self, and the 3 of us were still up the coaster, beginning to shiver a little in the drizzle. But it's raining now! You never introduced us to the fact that it was raining, so, yeah. That's... oh, this author. You have to reference the fact that it's raining directly, and not as quite as plain on the nose as "it was raining." That's the entire sentence. But you could have said it was a cold, relaxing night as we sat atop the coaster, lighting up our 10,000 bongs, which was difficult because it was also lightly drizzling at the time. Just saying. We never saw Eric again. I moved to the country soon afterwards. You can visit that roller coaster in Seattle, but somehow I suspect the same thing could happen in any city. Anyone in a densely populated area with a lot of lights could experience just such a snap. I know they like population centers. I don't hear the chirring out here in the country. The end, and this one's giving the med student a run for its money, and it's also giving me a run for... God, I don't know. I feel like I just want to throw my wallet at the computer and beg this author to just stop. That's not to say this concept couldn't be improved upon, but it would certainly be difficult. I believe the general concept, which we're doing our 3 pillars of analysis now, our general concept is 4 individuals get high and experience disturbing phenomena while tripping off of magic mushrooms, and one of them is such an imbecile that he actually believes that there is a race of insectoid beings living in this bizarre space in population centers, which, here's the thing, that would have worked. There being a discrete race of extra-dimensional beings that watch over densely populated areas and live amongst the lights, blaring up, illuminating skylines. That could have worked were it not for one detail. They were tripping magic mushrooms. Something that very, very, very frequently is accompanied by intense hallucination in users. So then, I find it very easy as a reader to write off the entire experience as a hallucination induced by the mushrooms. And here's the thing. If you truly want me to be afraid, if you want me to be intrigued, if you want me to stay engrossed in what story you are attempting to communicate to me, you must make it to where I feel a certain way. Here's the thing. I get what the author was going for. I do. And right now, I want to move over into execution, because the concept was decent without the mushrooms. So now we're going on to execution, which is what I'm talking about here. If you need the viewer or the reader to be overcome by fear or another emotion, you have to do everything in your part, everything that is possible for you as a writer, to subtly set an atmosphere, set a mood that will be likely to induce said emotions in a reader. Doesn't mean you're gonna bat 1,000, no. But if you wanted someone to be afraid of this, or if you even wanted someone to be, intellectually intrigued, you would omit the part of the story about them getting high off of the mushrooms. See, had they said they were just smoking pot, then I would be more likely to give this story a pass. Because, obviously, no one is going to hallucinate quite that strongly from what would be, I assume, casual marijuana use in their case. Now, on the grounds of these beings, they make a high-pitched whirring noise. They appear to sound and potentially be insectoid, and they blend in with the lights. That's interesting. I want to see more of that. And dear audience, if any of you are interested in writing and want to expand upon a story based around creatures like that, maybe, I would really, really like to see that. And I would give you a fair and more likely than not positive analysis on the show, your story, if I actually see anything like that. Just a thought if any of you are interested in writing and or looking for ideas to write about. Because I do think these creatures themselves, who are admittedly very briefly mentioned, have a lot of potential. And, I always like to cut aside the negative and see what positive lessons or elements we can take away from these stories. And I am going to applaud the author on his creation of the creatures, but just so much emphasis is placed upon the phenomena these creatures were causing, which don't differ all that much from hallucinations one would suffer had they imbibed something as potent as magic mushrooms. That's the way it is. So really, you attempted to add a little bit more character to your protagonist and main cast, or you were attempting to give the audience just a bit of suspension of disbelief, but in doing so you allowed for so much of it that you essentially allow us to discredit your story as a whole. Grammatically, it wasn't perfect, like I said, with a run-on sentence or two, the use of "and" between each item in a series when it should only be used prior to the final item in a series, and a few other minor things, but grammatically it wasn't just painful to read. The main issue comes with the execution for me. So that one is very deserving of its rating of 3.5. Alright, one more, dear audience, one more. Let's take a look at... Your Life is a Movie, which received, a 3.2. And it's only about 3 sentences long. Okay, let's begin this horrid, horrid piece of dreck. There's a movie theater in downtown Phoenix, Arizona that only plays movies from 1987. That's very oddly specific, and such a business would be unable to support itself because the audience just isn't that large for films exclusively from 87. It's just not. If you pay for 3 tickets and buy a large popcorn, they will play a film that shows your future. Okay, interesting. If you watch the entire film completely, you will have sleeping problems for the rest of your life. Wow, that was... I'm not gonna lie, that sucked. It's not bad as far as a ritual pasta concept goes. So the whole concept is, hey, there's a theater you can go to where you can see your entire life and your future played out on the big screen for you. So you'll know what decisions are coming up, what you might want to change, anything like that. And you know what? That's cool. That's cool. Once again, no theater would be able to operate solely on showing films from 87, I don't think. But the whole concept I enjoy, actually. So we're going to give that one a pass on the concept. Execution, again, this is far, far, far too short. I would like some expansion on this. I would like perhaps the protagonist tells us they heard from a friend who tried this and succeeded and actually stayed and watched the entire film, and what that was like, the negative effects it had on them. Or maybe they tell us about their own experience. Or they give us a bit more background on the theater or the individual or individuals who operate it. Or a little bit of backstory as to how it ties into the community of Phoenix. A lot of possibilities here that the author just seemed to have passed up for little to no reason other than sheer laziness or simply wanting to produce a concept and very little else. Grammatically, it's just fine. I don't really care about the grammar in this one. It's because the execution is just so disappointing. So much could have been done with this to take an interesting concept and make it into something so much more, but because the author was so just incredibly lazy with actually fleshing it out, actually putting a bit more thought into how they want to communicate their general idea to their audience, this pasta is left, unfortunately, very sadly, deserving that 3.2 out of 10 rating. And that is a shame, because I enjoyed this from a conceptual level, and it may be something I want to rework or expand upon later myself in my own writing. And if I do, I will be sure to send you guys a link to it. Alright, guys. Whew. Thus concludes our second ever Creepypasta.com Potpourri. I want to thank you for sticking around and listening to my analysis. Don't worry, we'll have guests next time to make things a bit more comical. As always, the links to all 3 stories are going to be in the description below, so if you want to go check them out for yourself, check out the comments section, maybe leave some constructive criticism for the authors, or positive feedback if you actually enjoyed any of the stories, or rate the story. Please be my guest. Give it a look. Also, take a look around creepypasta.com while you're there, because it is really a nice site with a kind community and some high-quality standards and a genuine emphasis on improving its members as far as their talent in writing. And that is something that I'm a very big advocate of here. You know I'm a big advocate of it. That's actually one of the reasons I started this show, was so that I could communicate some, I guess you could say, lessons to be gleaned from constructive criticism of very poorly written pieces of online fiction, so that we all can grow as writers and as natural critics of art and literature. Because whenever you look at something, whether or not you realize it, you are critiquing it. Whether it's as simple as I like it, or I don't like it, or you're sitting down writing a 5-page analysis of it, or speaking on it for a good length of time, as I do. And so I just think that really, in a way, each of these stories, even ones as bad as The Post Office, leaves us with just this deluge of information to drink in and to learn from and improve from and really just enhance our own writing and our own appreciation of the content that other people create. Um, so just really check into creepypasta.com because they share my mission in a way, improving the online horror community's writing standards. And as always, if you have any suggestions or constructive criticism or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I do respond to every single comment, even if it takes me a while. I don't check on YouTube all that terribly often because I've been very busy recently, but I do get back to each and every one of you. I love hearing from you guys. And, of course, if you have any suggestions as to how I could improve my broadcasting or recording style in the future, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. And if you would like to come on the show yourself and be a guest host with me over Skype, all you have to do is send me a private message with your Skype details and perhaps suggest a story you would like to analyze with me, and I will be happy to add you onto our schedule. Alright, guys, thank you very much for tuning in with us. As always, I'm the Overanalyst, and have a fantastic rest of the day.